The United States is moving ahead with its plan to hold an impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump, some claiming it's the only way to bring unity to the country. Sure. So we have to divide the country in order to bring it together. That's an interesting theory. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. As we speak to you now, the House of Representatives is preparing to deliver an article of impeachment against President Donald Trump to the United States Senate for, quote, incitement to insurrection. The largely ceremonial step typically triggers a trial in the Senate. Despite receiving the articles today, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has announced that the trial will not start until the week of February 9th. Now, let's just get this part of it very clear. They are telling you that this is to unify the country, that we need accountability in order for us to move together as one. This is gaslighting. This is a brazen lie, an intentional misdirection. They know what this is going to do. They do not seek accountability. They don't seek to make things better for the whole country. This, the Democrats recognize, is an opportunity to accomplish two very important goals to them. One is that they want to create essentially a civil war within the GOP, a political civil war, in which there will be the Trump faction and the never Trump faction at each other's throats, and the base, the Trump voters, 75 million of them, give or take, are going to just be disgusted with the GOP and prevent the kind of counterwave in 2022 to what we've seen here in 2020, to prevent a rising of a Tea Party-like movement from a unified conservative opposition. That's the Democrats' worst nightmare. What's their best way to prevent that from happening? Get Republicans to just go after each other. And how do you get that to happen? It's not hard. You do this. You pass, you get Republicans to vote in an impeachment proceeding that, even if they're unsuccessful, will be tainting a former president of the United States in ways meant to harm him and his party over the long term. And that brings me to point number two. Why do Democrats want this? It's not for unity. Okay, that's laughable. They want this because, while he is obviously no longer president, Donald Trump continues to be a threat in exile to the political aspirations, to the desire of a one-party country, of course, one party in favor of the Democrats. They recognize that he could very well come back in 4 years, run, and win. That's the whole benefit. That's what they get by barring him from future office, even after he's left office. Now, think about the precedent that this would set. You could try any president after the fact, or try anybody who would come under an impeachment proceeding. You can remove federal judges through impeachment. Anybody who would come through this process could be removed after the fact as a form of partisan punishment. That's not what this was intended to do. This is obviously not done. This is not done with any kind of respect for the Constitution or our traditions. This is bare knuckle politics at its worst from the Democrats, who recognize that. Chuck Schumer is out there telling everybody that the way to get past this is to first drive right through it. Play it.
In terms of impeachment, look, everyone wants to put this awful chapter in American history behind us. But sweeping it under the rug will not bring healing. The only way to bring healing is to actually have real accountability, which this trial affords.
That's right. The way to heal the wound is to dig deep into it. The way to make things improve here is to make them much worse. Freedom is slavery. Strength is weakness. Up is down. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. You get the idea. Democrats will say whatever they have to at this moment in time. And Chuck Schumer is leading the charge here with, this is how we bring the country together. He loves lying to your face like this. He knows that anybody who has a two-digit plus IQ and decides that they actually want the best interest of the country to be respected here knows that he's lying to them. And that's the fun part about it. He gets to give these pompous speeches about how this is what will unify the country, knowing that he's dividing the country. That's the kind of power that he thinks he wields right now, and we'll see if he's right. But he's also not alone. There are some Republicans out there, or should we say, soon-to-be former Republicans, like Mitt Romney. Can't believe I voted for that guy in 2012, but I guess, the best option we had. Here he is saying, yeah, that's right. The way to move the country forward together is to first spit in the face of 75 million Trump voters.
We're certainly going to have a trial. I wish that weren't necessary, but the president's conduct with regards to the call to Secretary of State Raffensperger in Georgia, as well as the incitation towards the insurrection that led to the attack on the Capitol, calls for a trial. And, if we're going to have unity in our country, I think it's important to recognize the need for accountability, for truth and justice. So I think there will be a trial, and I hope it goes as quickly as possible, but that's up to the council on both sides.
Yes, Mitt Romney, always standing up for conservatives in this country by stabbing them in the back at the most opportune moment for him to get a good editorial in the New York Times or perhaps a nice hit on CNN. But then there's also the Republican who understands the dynamics but isn't quite yet sold 100% maybe on this whole thing. You got Senator Rob Portman of Ohio said that he may not run again, or he's not going to run again, and he's open to presenting to the presentation of the evidence with the impeachment, which means he's probably going to vote for removal, right? He's going to vote for conviction, I should say, in the Senate. Then there's even Marco Rubio of Florida. Listen to what the senator from the Sunshine State has to say.
First of all, I think the trial is stupid. I think it's counterproductive. We already have a flaming fire in this country, and it's like taking a bunch of gasoline and pouring it on top of the fire. We're going to jump right back into what we've been going through for the last 5 years and stirring it up again with the trial. And it's just going to be bad for the country. It really is.
Yes. That's an honest assessment. Everyone can see this, right? We all understand. There's nothing to be gained here for the nation, for our political discourse, for the sense of moving forward together on key policy issues, for understanding that we face a currency that has tremendous pressure on it from the soon-to-be $30 trillion in debt we've run up, from our Chinese Communist Party opponents overseas who seek global domination and are increasingly taking that approach with more seriousness. All the challenges we could face as Americans. If you're going to bring us together, this is the exact opposite way that you would go. What they're doing right now, what the Democrats are doing, is meant to divide the country, to weaken Republicans, to destroy conservatism, and to end forever, with one fell swoop, Trumpism. Don't let them tell you otherwise. You know they love to lie to you. All right, with the inauguration of Joe Biden in the rear view, it's time for the National Guard to pack up and head home, right? Not so fast. After the break, Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida is going to join us to discuss plans to keep our nation's capital militarized. I love Black Rifle coffee. I drink it every morning. In fact, I drink it a few times every day. If you're like me and you need coffee to get you going, but you don't want to be supporting some company that's all about wokeness, political correctness, you don't want to have to wait in line for it either. I mean, make this really convenient for you and get delicious, great coffee at a fantastic price. I can cover all of that for you with Black Rifle coffee. The best way to enjoy Black Rifle coffee is through the Coffee Club. That's a free subscription where your chosen coffee is roasted, packaged, and shipped free to your door on your schedule. In addition to the convenience, you receive special discounted pricing and gain access to exclusive products, member-only content, partner discounts, and more. Get the freshest coffee in America without leaving the couch. Purchase at blackriflecoffee.com/buck and use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first Coffee Club order. Again, that's blackriflecoffee.com/buck. Great coffee from American patriots who share your values. Go check it out today. With the inauguration of Joe Biden now behind us, you might think the 25,000 plus National Guardsmen deployed to the Capitol would be sent home to their respective states, right? Maybe not. News outlets are reporting that as many as 5,000 National Guard troops could remain in Washington, D.C. through mid-March due to the fear of mass protests during the impeachment trial of former President Trump. The news comes days after photos emerged showing members of the National Guard being forced to camp out in a parking garage while they were stationed in D.C. According to reporting by Politico, the parking garage had no internet reception, one electrical outlet, and one bathroom with 2 stalls for 5,000 soldiers. The news led to an outcry amongst lawmakers, including Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida. At least some congressmen were upset about this. Congressman Waltz tweeted, quote, "This treatment is beyond despicable. While these service members are away from their families, we should be working to accommodate them, not force them out into the cold. We need answers." Well, joining us now is Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida, also a veteran of the special operations community. Congressman, thanks so much for joining. I just wanted to let you respond to what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said about this issue. Play it.
Now, Mr. President, it came to our attention last night that members of the National Guard, after standing on duty to protect the Capitol for Inauguration Day, keeping us safe, were sleeping in parking garages and cramped quarters without proper space or ventilation. It was utterly unacceptable. I have told those who run the security of the Capitol that it can never happen again, and I pledge to every National Guard member that it will not happen again.
Did this happen, Congressman, because of the photo op the Democrats needed? What went on here?
I want to know why it happened in the first place. I'm told by soldiers on the ground, including some of the leadership, that it was actually members and staff that were complaining that they were sleeping in the office buildings during their breaks. Keep in mind, they're standing out on this fence line, staring into the abyss all night long, about 15 feet apart on 12-hour shifts. So they were just taking breaks, and and apparently that was offensive to someone. We'll continue to press to get to the bottom of it, but I think the bigger question here is twofold. One, what was the threat reporting that drove the 26,000 guardsmen number? Keep in mind, they're not just sitting around like active duty, ready to spring at a moment's notice or leap at a moment's notice. They have businesses, they have civilian careers. Many of them are single parents. They have kids they've left behind. Fine, they came and did it for the inauguration, but what is the threat reporting that's now driving this 5,000 to 7,000 number for months at a time? For months at a time. And number two is, do they need to be standing shoulder to shoulder so that Pelosi and Schumer can look out their window and feel secure? I mean, this is 5 times the number of troops we have in Afghanistan and Iraq combined.
It's stunning.
And meanwhile, they
Go
still
ahead.
need to be doing COVID. They still need to be doing vaccine distribution, natural disasters, their overseas missions. This is an abuse of a critical military asset. And my message to them is, this is a law enforcement problem. If you really want law enforcement to be able to deal with it, how about we fund the police and stop the left from introducing bills, which they're doing as we speak, to defund federal law enforcement?
You mentioned COVID. It's stunning as you see these photos. This is indoors in very close quarters. A lot of members of the National Guard. This is where they have to post up because they're doing their duty. And these are actually situations, these are photos we're showing of how you do get COVID spread. Indoors, close quarters, long periods of time. But we've seen, it's almost like magic, Congressman, that when the Democrats have a need to ignore the risk of COVID, whether it's Gavin Newsom having dinner with a dozen buddies indoors in California or any number of other high-profile circumstances, BLM gathering together by the thousands and thousands in hundreds of cities, the COVID risk magically disappears for a few minutes, although now we're actually hearing that some of the members of the Guard may have been exposed and gotten it from this duty. But you bring up the threat reporting. Why isn't this obviously being dealt with as a law enforcement problem? On what basis are they claiming that there's effectively a need to protect D.C. as though there's an imminent insurgency, something you and I have both spent some time dealing with under real circumstances?
Well, that's the exact questions that I've sent formally over to the Pentagon and over to the Department of Justice. I've requested a briefing. Show me this reporting. Doctrinally, tactically, you need, from an offensive standpoint, then they would have to show threat reporting for 3 times the number that you have in defense. It's typically a 3-to-1 ratio. And I am, I'm finding it hard to believe that there's reporting for 75,000, or now if you're you're asking for 7,000, then 21,000 insurgents, armed insurgents that you need the military with automatic weapons, with their body armor to defend against. I mean, I'm not dismissing what happened January 6th. I was on the House floor when it happened, and they absolutely need to be prosecuted and brought to justice. But to continue this going forward, well, one can only speculate. I think Speaker Pelosi, frankly, likes the optic of having the United States military there to defend the Capitol against these Trump supporters that, folks have yet to show me while the impeachment trial goes on. And that is politicizing the military. It's politics at its worst. And meanwhile, these men and women who have been mobilized for issue after issue, from natural disasters to COVID to overseas missions, are now away from their families once again in perpetuity. And we have no answers as to why.
Congressman, I also wanted to ask about your feelings, given what we're hearing this week, about how the pathway to unity, if you listen to Chuck Schumer, if you listen to many Democrats, and even a handful of Republicans, including Mitt Romney in the Senate, the pathway to unity is through this process of a post-presidency impeachment trial. What do you say to that?
Look, this is pouring fuel on the fire. I mean, this is just pouring salt in the wounds of millions of Americans who have real concerns. I expressed them as well about this election. One of the things that we have to understand is Florida had many, many issues with their elections over the years, and their state legislature stepped up and got it fixed, and now we have none. That's where this needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those state legislators need to do their job and rein in the abuses of the election that occurred under the cover of COVID. I mean, that's the path to having confidence amongst our population in election integrity and how our elections are run, so that they feel like they can take out their grievances at the ballot box, not through any type of violence. We need to condemn violence across the board, but it needs to be equal condemnation on extremes on both the right and the left. But what they're doing with this impeachment trial, frankly, is unconstitutional. And we're seeing now that Chief Justice Roberts doesn't feel like he needs to preside over an unconstitutional process, because the Constitution calls for him to preside over a current sitting president, not one that has already left office. So now you may have this new Senate President pro tempore, Senator Leahy, who's a Democrat, acting as both judge and juror. And if the purpose of the impeachment trial is to remove a sitting president, makes no sense to me to do it with a president that's already left office.
Congressman Waltz, thanks so much, sir. Appreciate you joining us.
All right, Buck.
Since the inauguration of President Biden, some of the most hardcore lockdown advocates around the country have suddenly begun changing their tune. What changed? We'll take a deep dive into the softening stance of some on the left in tonight's Buck Brief. Recently, I got a deep dive into home title theft, and you better hope this crime never happens to you, because it can ruin you financially. Here's how it goes down. The legal titles to our homes are kept online, where they can be hacked. A cyber thief finds your home's title, forges your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home until your equity is gone. You won't know about this until the collection calls pour in, and you're not protected by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. But Home Title Lock protects you, and in the unlikely event you become a victim of title theft while a member, Home Title Lock will spend up to $250,000 in legal fees to help restore your home's title. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Again, code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. President Joe Biden has already achieved massive success, it seems, in the fight to defeat coronavirus. Oh yes, you heard me correct, folks. Joe Biden literally saving this nation in ways Trump couldn't have dreamed of. Look, I know what you're thinking. But Buck, the death count is the highest it's ever been. Biden admitted he had no plans to stop the trajectory of the disease. But listen, that's all fake news. If you want to see what real success looks like, take a gander at the Democrat-run states and cities suddenly lifting their lockdowns and restrictions and saying they're opening up their economies. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle, right? There's no way any of this was politically motivated or influenced. Simply put, Biden's week-long presence in the Oval Office has enabled us to begin the return to normal. Hallelujah. Sorry for all the sarcasm. The point here is that COVID has been shamelessly used as a partisan weapon for the last year, and corrupt politicians are barely even trying to hide this anymore. Few journalists will hold them to account, but we will examine all of their lying and hypocrisy and all the rest of it on today's Buck Brief. Let's go back to the beginning for a second, shall we? When we began this process of the COVID-19 lockdown era, it started with 15 days to slow the spread, and then they extended it to 30, and then they extended it to as long as your state basically wants to have stay-at-home orders, lockdowns for some businesses, you're stuck. It's on them. That was what we were told by Fauci and the other health experts out there needed to happen. And then this continued on. And if you tried to bring up that there were other calculations that society needed to be making, if you tried to bring up, say, that businesses need to operate or else millions of people will lose their jobs, that children need to be in school, that drug overdoses, undiagnosed cancer, depression, alcohol abuse, all these things would massively increase as a result of these lockdowns, you were told you were a heartless monster who did not care about the people losing their lives in this pandemic. That was what you were told. That was the way it went. Joe Biden's been in office for a week. Cases nationally are at a peak right now. They are at, in some places, at sometimes near or at an all-time high. Hospitalizations are very high. Deaths are very high. All that's happening right now, despite all the masking, all the lockdowns. I know that stuff worked exactly as they told us it would. That's what we're supposed to believe. But now you have some places that are coming out to tell you that they have decided that it's probably time to start thinking about or even actively reopening. The mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, for example, Democrat stronghold, Lightfoot wants to reopen bars and restaurants as soon as possible. Now, this is just floating it out there because as soon as possible has always been the basic framework for this. The problem was they made it seem as though it wasn't possible, unless you're a heartless monster who probably voted for Donald Trump, it wasn't possible to take anything else into account other than the maximum measures to contain the virus. That's it, full stop. If you looked at anything else, you were a bad person. But now all of a sudden Biden's in office for a week and they're starting to think, maybe this is not the best plan we've been engaged in here. Maybe we should think about some other stuff. It's not just Chicago. Here is Gretchen Whitmer, who is really the queen of the lockdowners. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer has been putting Michigan, the governor of Michigan, she's been putting Michigan through hell because she says, oh, that's what the science says. Yeah, that's what she's always telling us. Here she is telling us now, oh, you can actually start to reopen Michigan.
Today, the Department of Health and Human Services is issuing an epidemic order to resume indoor dining on Monday, February 1st.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer making an announcement thousands have waited months to hear. Indoor dining back open in Michigan.
What changed? I mean, it's still wintertime. It's going to be very cold in Michigan in February. Still have a lot of cases. Oh, you mean they can start to reopen now because it's not all necessary for the defeat of Orange Man bad? Is that where we are? That's what we're seeing? Okay. Yeah, that is what's going on here, isn't it? Muriel Bowser, mayor of D.C. D.C.'s been here we go. D.C. could begin reopening next week. That's pretty sudden, isn't it? I don't know. Are you a big believer in coincidences? This seems like such a coincidence. The mayors, the extreme lockdown governors and mayors across the country are all within about a week of each other starting to say, I think it's about time we started to get the economy up and running again. I think we could start to relax some of our most extreme restrictions. Oh, it's a coincidence, though. Remember that. It's all supposed to be a coincidence. And then you have, oh, that's right. I guess if he's the king of lockdowners, you could say, Gavin Newsom, ending stay-at-home orders across all of California. Wait, hold on a second. We're not out of the woods. We're not past the wintertime spike. We haven't seen a crash in COVID cases. That's not what happened. And we certainly haven't seen a class in excellence here put on by the government anywhere. Well, actually, West Virginia, a few places done pretty well. But in general, the big blue states have been awful at distribution of the vaccine. So now even Newsom is joining the, hey, I guess we can start to live life again side of things. Oh, and my favorite, the lockdown expert extraordinaire, Governor Cuomo of New York. Remember, he said this recently.
One of the first points we're going to start with in 2021 is we can't keep the economy closed until the vaccine hits critical mass. If you listen to what they say, they in quotes, first it was about 70% of the population has to be vaccinated to hit critical mass. Some people say it's as high as 90%, but whatever, 70 to 90, that is a very large percentage of the population.
Yeah. So what he is saying here, the argument that these Democrats are now making, is the argument that people like me have been making for almost a year, which is that you can't just turn society on its head and have all these arbitrary rules and decisions in place because you think it will help contain this virus that has clearly not been contained, obviously, but they had to keep it all going until the Biden presidency came in. They haven't given up all their control, and they won't. They want to do this in phases. They like the control, but they'll start to loosen it up just a little bit. And remember this, you're supposed to be thankful for it. And you better not question the wisdom of these lockdowns and mandates for masks and other things. You better not question it, because maybe they'll just decide to take away your freedom again. Welcome to the new America. That's the way this is going. Biden's America. If you thought relations between the U.S. and China would dramatically improve with the beginning of a new Biden administration, think again. We've got Dean Chang from the Heritage Foundation joining us with some in-depth analysis next. It's less than a week into his presidency, and Joe Biden's already facing his first foreign policy test from China. This weekend, 2 formations of Chinese warplanes flew dangerously close to its island neighbor Taiwan, penetrating the country's air defense identification zone. This is quite a provocation. According to reports, the first formation included 12 aircraft, several of which were capable of carrying nuclear weapons. In a statement responding to China's hostility, the Biden administration said, quote, "We urge Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure against Taiwan and instead engage in meaningful dialogue with Taiwan's democratically elected representatives." Apparently, China was not impressed. The very next day, they did it again, this time with 15 aircraft. China's actions are not new, but the weekend's incursion suggests that a honeymoon period between Beijing and the Biden administration is highly unlikely. For more on the continued tensions between China and the U.S., let me bring in Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Dean Chang. Dean, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dean, China's incursion took place on the same day that a U.S. carrier group entered the South China Sea. This seems to be all part of continued disputes over the islands there, the Spratly and Paracel. What is the message that, there you see on the map some of the islands we're talking about? Well, you got Taiwan, obviously, and then you've got the island chains in addition to this. Let's start with Taiwan, though. Well, what's the message that China is sending at the beginning of this new Biden administration by buzzing Taiwanese airspace with a whole bunch of planes?
So the Chinese are sending several messages, one obviously to Taiwan. If you think that you can say what you want and not think about rejoining the mainland, then you better get your thoughts in the right place, especially because Donald Trump, who was frankly one of the most supportive of the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, is no longer president. And the Chinese are throwing down the gauntlet to Joe Biden. I actually don't believe that in the past the Chinese have generally tested incoming presidents, but I think in this case it is a test. They want to see, are you going to be supportive of Taiwan the way Donald Trump was? Are you going to try and walk back the U.S.-Taiwan relationship? Tell us, Joe, what are you going to do with us here in Beijing?
And a lot of analysis for years now, the South China Sea has been held up as one of the places most likely to see a possible military standoff, incursion, something turning hot, so to speak. Tell us what's going on with the Chinese claims to these island chains, the Spratly and the Paracel, and how that could result in much bigger conflict.
So the Chinese basically dredged up thousands of cubic feet of coral. By the way, that's environmentally devastating. And used that to build islands on top of submerged reefs, then turned around and said, those islands, they have territorial waters of 12 nautical miles and exclusive economic zones just like real islands do. The U.S. and other countries basically said that's nonsense. But it's noteworthy here that between 2012 and 2015, the U.S. did zero freedom of navigation operations around the Spratlys as the Chinese were building those islands. So that's an area, now they have runways that can handle fighters and nuclear-capable bombers. So the Chinese are basically now saying, these islands are ours, all that water between the mainland and those islands are ours, and you enter at your own risk.
What does that mean, that the waters, why would China want to assert dominance in that way? What comes with that? What are some of the additional considerations of taking, not just, as you said, they're building islands now and saying this is part of China. What do they want with the expansion of their territorial waters around the islands as well? What does that do for them?
So if they succeed in making the claim that those are territorial waters, several things happen. One, all of the stuff within those waters is theirs, which means fish. It's some of the richest fishing grounds in the world. Oil, we think, possibly oil at the bottom of the seabed in that area. It will deny the Philippines and Vietnam their own economic zones and access to that oil. The other thing is, if you take a look at that big island under the word China, that's Hainan. Hainan has China's newest spaceport. It has a ballistic missile submarine port. It has multiple attack submarine ports. It has a bunch of military runways. It is one of the most militarized pieces of real estate on Earth. If the Chinese control everything within that dashed line, they've created a buffer to protect all those valuable military assets from spying eyes and also possibly attack from, say, a Virginia or Columbia class submarine armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles.
South China Sea, Dean, isn't the only area that China's showing a little bit of friction with its neighbors. This weekend, there were reports of another minor, this time, border clash between the Chinese and Indian armies. These are the two countries with the largest populations in the world. They both got nukes. What's going on over there toward the India-China border?
It's really interesting that you bring that up because the Chinese are doing on land, on the China-India border, what they've done at sea. They have now apparently started building villages in the disputed territory where India claims a certain amount of area and China claims an overlapping amount of area. And the Chinese are saying, nonsense, we're building a village in our territory, helping to lay claim. As you note, these are two nuclear-armed countries. One of the things that during the Cold War, both the U.S. and Soviet Union tried very, very hard never to do, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis, was to go in an eyeball-to-eyeball standoff because nobody wanted to risk nuclear escalation. China and India are in the same place, but China is basically saying, I'm willing to play that game of chicken.
Now, what do you think they will do? What do you think the Chinese Communist Party will do if they don't get the kind of pushback from the Biden administration that they would have gotten, say, from Trump before him? How far do you expect they're going to push some of these claims and some of these actions in the year ahead? What do you think their next moves are going to be, Dean?
So I think northeast of the Paracels on your map is an area called Scarborough Shoal. That's another Chinese claim. It's been very worrisome about would the Chinese build islands northeast of the Paracels, which would really sort of lock down that entire territory. If the U.S. wavers in its support for Taiwan, I think we're going to see ever more brazen incursions against Taiwan. And I think that the Chinese are also going to be playing havoc in our cyber networks because they know that that's an area of vulnerability. And again, if they don't face pushback, if you don't punish them for their transgressions, they are just going to keep on pushing.
Dean, always appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining. It's going to be a busy 4 years for you.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Good to see you. It's almost time for a rapid fire look at some of the stories we haven't quite gotten to yet. Quick hits up next. We got a new sponsor, friends, and they are awesome. Mammoth Nation, America's conservative discount club. Their mission is to fight for the conservative values and causes we all care about. That includes conservative candidates, the police and first responders, active military and veterans, American farmers and ranchers, the Second Amendment, and much more. The proceeds from your membership and purchases help support all of these great causes. It's better than a donation. In return for your patriotism, you get great discounts on things like hotels, shopping, wireless, prescriptions, telehealth, and more. Spend your money where it counts. I'm a lifetime member. You should become a lifetime member too. Join in the fight. This is a great program and it's a great deal, especially when you see the discounts you'll get. It's amazing. Go to mammothnation.com/buck. That's mammothnation.com/buck. Become a lifetime member today and see all the benefits of being a member of the Mammoth Nation. Senator Chuck Schumer's latest slip of the tongue goes viral, and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie turns on Trump. Those stories are coming up in tonight's Quick Hits. Let's start with Senator Schumer. This one, I think everybody could enjoy.
But make no mistake, there will be a trial, and when that trial ends, senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States.
Indeed, it reminds me of the great erection of 1805 in whatever. It's crazy, right? Oh, man. This is what they say. This is what they do. Your elected representatives, your tax dollars at work. I know it was a slip of the tongue, but still a fun one. Can't let that one go because, it is Chuck Schumer after all. Chris Christie. I think Chris Christie believes that he has a shot at being the future of the Republican Party. And I think that Chris Christie is delusional on that point, but who knows? He also has a very personal beef with the Trump world because Donald Trump was going to bring Chris Christie in. They even thought at one point perhaps for Attorney General or some senior role. And then it was widely reported that Jared Kushner, because Kushner's father was prosecuted by Chris Christie as the Attorney General for New Jersey, that Kushner wanted a little bit of payback. So Christie got pushed out into the cold, and hell hath no fury like a Christie scorned. Let's hear from him.
And the evidence here has shown right from the beginning that while every election has some irregularities, and I'm sure this one did too, there were no type of irregularities that would have changed the result in any one state, let alone the 4 states that would need to have been changed for the result of the election have been changed. And folks in my party who are doing that, quite frankly, are just trying to make political points with those people who the president and others lied to about this over the course of the 10 weeks after the election. And it's shameful that they're doing it.
There are still, and I know this from people that were running in races in some of these states at the congressional level, and those who are looking at the data, the numbers, there are still questions about not just the tabulation issue in some cases, but also the rules being changed. That was done in places like Pennsylvania in ways that a good faith analysis can come back with as unconstitutional. And that was just shut down by the courts because the courts didn't want to say on procedural grounds, yeah, you couldn't do that, so we're going to toss out all these votes. But because courts were afraid to do it, that doesn't mean that there was nothing there. And there is a need for Republicans to get these questions answered. And in fact, if we want an example of how to push the case, but how to do so on rational, reasonable grounds, really excellent exchange over the weekend between one of my favorite sitting U.S. senators. And he's not a warm and fuzzy guy. I mean, he's not a cuddly fellow, Senator Rand Paul, but he's smart and he's principled, and that's good enough for me. Senator Rand Paul with George Stephanopoulos, here is how that went.
I'm not willing just to sit here and say, oh, everybody on the Republican side is a liar and there is no fraud. No, there were lots of problems, and there were secretaries of state who illegally changed the law, and that needs to be fixed, and I'm going to work hard to fix it, and I won't be cowed by people saying, oh, you're a liar. That's the problem with the media today, is they say all Republicans are liars and everything we say is a lie. There are two sides to every story. Interview somebody on the other side, but don't insert yourself into the story to say we're all liars because we did some fraud in the election.
There are not two sides of the story. This has been looked at in every single state. The election results were certified in every single state. There are two sides to every story.
George, you're forgetting who you are. You're forgetting who you are as a journalist. If you think there's only one side, you're inserting yourself into the story to say, I'm a liar.
Now, I actually have to disagree with Senator Rand Paul on one important point here. Yes, I think his case about the election fraud is correct. I think it's reasonable, rational. I think he did a very good job explaining the view of tens of millions of Americans who do want answers about very legitimate questions about how the state of Pennsylvania just changed election laws, for example, in an election year, when the Constitution makes very clear that that has to be done by the legislature, not by the executive branch, by the governor or governor appointee officials. So that's a real question for which we have not yet gotten any answers. But I disagree with Rand Paul on this point when he says that George Stephanopoulos has forgotten who he is. No, he hasn't. That's exactly who George Stephanopoulos is. This guy was a Clinton White House political operative who's now dressing up and pretending to be a nonpartisan journalist every day. They actually stick to that. They believe that nonsense. They'll tell you that. Yeah, he's a journo. I'm a partisan Trump flack or whatever. He's a journo. Based on what? I've never worked for an administration. I've never taken a paycheck from a political party. But sure enough, if you're a Democrat, you can do that at the White House level and then be some overpaid, overpampered TV clown like Stephanopoulos, who is lecturing a U.S. senator who is way smarter than he is about what the truth of this last election was. But no, Stephanopoulos hasn't forgotten. That is who he is. He's making sure that he is helping the home team, and the home team is Democrat. Despite all the stuff they'll tell you at ABC News, that's very clear. And then we have this new administration. Speaking of smart or not so smart, new administration has some new people that you've seen before perhaps, but you're getting a reminder now. This is supposed to be the A-team, the best of the best, the smartest guys and gals in the room. Jen Psaki is the White House press secretary. And she might be a nice lady. I don't know her. But here she is doing the White House press secretary thing.
And President Biden
There's nothing wrong with your TV. A lot of talking. A lot of and talking going on there. Look, I mean, I know that you can do a supercut of a lot of people, make them look silly. Probably do one with me where I'm making weird faces and all kinds of stuff. But you know, people need to have a sense of humor about themselves here. Jen Psaki, a lot of stuff going on there. If you're the White House press secretary, maybe work on that a little bit. Just a thought, a helpful tip, because that's what I want to do. I want to help people. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with the one and only Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.